Hello, this is Dale Matthews. It's Saturday, and I'm joined on this rather warm day by Mike Jones. Hello, Mike.
Yes, sometimes I have to turn my microphone on. That's
Oh,
annoying. Yes,
yeah.
it is rather hot out there. I clocked a 104 at my house. I'm sure it was hotter probably in town.
When I was at the store today, I stopped and I saw a couple of people who were working in the store, and I said, it's awful hot at that parking lot. Do you guys think you could do something about that?" And the two ladies were, "Oh, that's kind of funny." Well, it wasn't that funny, but they saw it as the joke that it was. But the guy that was with him, he said, "What do you think I could do about it?" Hey, oh, really? Oh, never mind. Goodbye. And they took him aside and said, "What's the matter with you?" "Well, he was just asking me to do something about the temperature in the parking lot." I said, "Can't you tell it's a joke?" No, no, he took it to heart and he got kind of upset about it. Whoa, 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 whoa. One of them said, "Don't be yelling at a customer. It's okay, just relax. It was just joking. See, we laughed about it. Oh, I thought he was asking me to do something. Whatever. They got it. Yeah. So,
Well, yeah, I'm trying to figure out in what world you could possibly do anything about how hot it is in the parking
he
lot.
got
I
instantly
mean, that would
angry.
be
That's very strange. What are you angry about? It was just, I don't know. Yeah. He thought I was accusing him of not keeping the temperature down in the parking lot. Okay.
Well, unfortunately, we have one of those every third word jumpy bandwidth situations tonight. So if you're not hearing what I'm saying at any point during the thing, just let me know and I will repeat myself. And just before we get going on this other stuff, let me do a little housekeeping having to do with the PILT money we were talking about. I received a notification from Margaret Goodwin talking about that there was a certain amount of PILT money that was expected and that was accounted for in the budget. And the amount of money that they actually ended up getting ended up being $30,000 less. So there is no surplus in that fund to be given to the sheriff. So unfortunately, error on my part, and that's the name of that tune. It happens from time to time.
Now, Mike, you are coming across crystal clear, but what I, I you can't air me. Then don't worry about it. Okay.
I didn't get any of that.
Yeah, well, that's partly because I was speaking funny, but as I usually do. But if you have any problems,
Oh, well, you don't have to do that tonight, Dale. You don't have to do that because you're doing that anyway.
oh, okay, all right.
So maybe I'm getting through to you fine, but I'm not getting you back in the same way. So just
You're
understand that
doing
going in.
just fine. So we had read that as $640,000. Peggy Goodwin, Margaret Goodwin, says that it was supposed to be 670. The reason I said what I said and Mike said what he said is that the commissioners told us again and again and again and again, absolutely in no possible way are we going to include anything in our budget that we don't already have in hand. Well, they didn't say parenthetically except for this. So when this came in,
Mm-hmm.
and I figured based on what they had told us that this was not because they didn't know there's sequestration, which is maybe the government's not going to give you all the money you thought you were going to get. They're using part of that thing which they say we can't possibly do here, which is they just lop off a certain percentage and say, okay, the money's going out minus 10% or minus 5% or whatever. And they
Mm-hmm.
weren't sure how much was going to be cut off. And maybe that's where the missing $30,000 went. But they said, every single budget time. I mean, every single budget meeting, we're putting absolutely nothing in this budget that we don't already have. So stop asking us. Not true. Arthur O'Hare. Okay, over my shoulder, you'll see a term, and these are supposed to be kind of sweaty letters, which fits with today. And no, it doesn't mean that Condoleezza Rice has a dissension with the current president. She was the former Secretary of State. And
Yes.
and no,
Yes.
and no, it does not mean this is not the the descendancy tree of Confederate veteran families. Condescension. No, no, it's not convicts that are going into an East Coast airport
Yes.
and they're descending down into the airport.
Yes.
Not that either. It's not
Ironically, condescension is what's happening right now because somebody thinks we can't read.
No, no, it's just that, well, let's divide it up because you can't put a long word like that all the way across the page and expect people to see the tiny little letters. And I was trying to let you see that they were sweaty. No, and this is also not about the water that's forming on the outside of Mike's iced tea there. No,
Yeah,
this is about
that's
condensation.
condensation. Yes.
Right, right. It's not that. So
Yes.
we're having.
You know what? I saw one of these Facebook memes that is kind of funny, and it says, "Don't be condescending." That's when someone talks down to you.
I like that. I like that. It's subtle, but I like it.
Yes.
So, no, this is condescension right here. I told you many times that we've spent absolutely nothing on the airport. The county has spent not a single dime on the airport. You keep asking about the money that we've spent on the airport. We spent nothing on an airport, Mr. Matthews. Well, we know they did.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of a condescending attitude. And I thought what we might do today is pull things together into a slightly different pattern and talk a bit about where do people come up with this kind of attitude to treat anybody this way? Mike and I both happened to see a glance at this movie on HBO called Emma, and it's got Gwyneth Paltrow in it. You want to set up and just tell them the basic idea behind this movie called Emma, Mike? What was it about?
Oh, I would say probably what late 1800s high society over there, where they got more money than they know what to do with, and everything than they I couldn't really get into the whole thing because I came into it halfway and I kept watching it thinking something's going to happen here. Never ever did.
It's a British costume drama, set in the late 1800s, and Gwyneth Paltrow looks lovely, but all the guys are talking about who maybe they're going to marry, and all the women are talking about who maybe those guys are going to marry, and their prime concern is who's going to get married and then live in high society.
Yes.
Well, now I don't like talking about the class divide because then it makes me sound like I'm a follower of Lenin or something. But what I do believe is that there is in our area too a leisure class, a class of people who, many of them, not all of them, but many of them came from California, and they made their fortune there through one way or another. It might have come from their family. Maybe they worked hard and now they're living off the proceeds, whatever it is, or living off of their version of PERS, or whatever. They worked hard and they deserve all of it. They didn't work at all and maybe don't deserve any of it, but they got it anyway. And it's a leisure class, and these are some of the people that will go down and go shopping at the diamond store or whatever. Oh, what could I possibly wear for the ball tonight or whatever? Because there are things that happen in this area that high society, our version of high society, does attend, and then they're going to do their do-gooder type of their public spirited type of activities and helping out with this or that or the other, and it often revolves around helping the children and etc. And then there's the working class. Obviously I'm a member of the working class. I got an okay education because I worked hard and got great grades and blah blah. Or I never would have gone to school. There wasn't any way my family was going to be able to send me to school. And Mike and I run what purports to be a semi-intellectual show.
Yes. Semi.
Right. So I wonder sometimes about the people that fit into these categories, and I believe that there are folks who see themselves as the ruling class. They have the right connections, they belong to the right club or clubs, they have what's considered to be the right attitude about that, and then there's the great unwashed, that's the rest of us here, and we'll go to a meeting and we'll say, but you keep telling us that no money has been spent on this, and we can see that it has. I'm telling you, and because I'm telling you, this is the condescending attitude that I have, that you ought to listen to the ruling class. You ought to listen to your rulers. This is
Is that what they say?
well, that's not exactly the way they put it, but I remember when Treasurer John Harrelson was in, he had said to the Dwight Ellis administration, he got up and he said, you know, what these people in this audience should be doing is they come to this business session. This isn't set up for them to give any kind of feedback to the government. The government knows what it's doing. A strange thing for this guy to say. And what they ought to be doing is sitting quietly, hands folded, I assume, in the audience and learning from us. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And that makes a lot of sense against the backdrop of recent events. You've got the IRS. Well, it just turns out now that all the emails are destroyed. Oh, what you going to do about that? And then Supreme Court rules on things that some say they don't have the jurisdiction to rule on. And it goes on down the line that you have all this government dysfunction all the way down to the local level. So condescension, that's the least of what you ought to expect from them.
As Cheryl Walker puts it, I'm not going to let you see my private emails stored on the county's computer, because we would have to spend time going through there and pulling out all the things I don't want you to read. And we don't have the staff for that. We'll never have the staff for that. Therefore, we'll never obey state law, which says that if you ask for it because we've used your county property, that we have to give it to you. We're never going to give you that.
Yes, it's perfectly analogous. And you notice that in all of these situations, listen, if it were you or I that were accused of withholding emails, there would be a no-knock SWAT raid at our house in no time at all, and they would be gathering whatever it was that they thought that you needed to give them. But if government does it, there is no enforcement. No one ever goes and says, no, really, you have to give those up right now. I mean, this is the problem. There really needs to be that sort of accountability. Hey, they asked for this information. Now you got to give it up right now. Like, I'm standing here and you take me to where they are, and I'll put my thumb drive into your computer and download all the stuff that I need. That's how it ought to be done, but it's never done that way. You get lawyers holding up the process, or in this particular case, no one even pushes it any further because Cheryl says, I don't have it. Oh, that would take too long. Okay.
Well, what's going to happen, the right kind, in my opinion, what the right kind of commissioner should be, is that information comes to you on a separate website, if you like, and you don't even need to ask for it. Why do I need to put in a request for that? It just goes there. I mean, You can just go and look at it, all of it. And then you can go look for yourself. Now, if you don't want to, as the Courier puts it, if you don't want to waste your time, fine. But if you want to see it, of course, because they're just temporary employees. They're using your facilities. And so there's no private emails. You shouldn't be putting those on there anyway. And we know we've got a pretty good idea of, I think you ought to vote for this. Well, I've received your email, and let's talk about it a little back and forth through emails, so we don't have to bother with including the public in on our discussion. You know what's there. It's going to be easy to find that, because they've even said during meetings that they do that. It's illegal.
Yeah. No, that would be easy to find. And just a little sidebar here. Were that Sandy Casanelli?
Oh, brother.
They would have had the SWAT team in there or something. They would have had something along those lines, because you would have had, a consensus among the rest of the people that this person, the rest of the people in that inner circle, that you have to deliver this stuff to us right now. So I mean, that's the difference between certain types of people in government, and
I'd
what you
sometimes
can
walk
expect
down.
from and for them.
I go to all the meetings with her, and in the audience. Usually, I was the only person in the audience. What's new? And I'd be walking down the hallway with her afterwards, and people would part as she walked down the hallway and stand on the side and whisper to each other. What a terrible atmosphere for her. Can you imagine if somebody was dumb enough to run for these two positions that comes up this next time and the other person wasn't a fiscal conservative? What a waste that would be. I wouldn't run. You can't. You won't get anything done at all. So if the other person that runs is going to be a pal of Simon Hare, why bother running? You're going to get nothing done. You need two fiscal conservatives. At least people are saying, but
Yeah.
why are we spending the money on this? Now that this, first of all, you don't give them the money before they're supposed to start working, which is what he was actually objecting to. You don't give them the money before they've done anything. And after the whole thing is dead, then you say, no, we can't support you working on those number of hours because this project never happened. Why have we given them the money in the first place? It was based on shaky
Yeah.
premise, and now it's
It,
based on absolutely nothing.
yeah, it doesn't make any sense, and there really hasn't been a satisfactory explanation from them about that at all.
But what he's saying here is, you've already asked that question, we've already answered it. We've answered it. We've answered it. There's nothing,
Yeah.
nothing, nothing. Well, I'm sorry, there's something, 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 and you're not telling us the truth. I didn't say it that way, but you would sure think I did. Look at this guy. Okay. So
Yes.
another thing that we've spoken about very clearly, and Mike and Viken did a man in the street and women in the street kind of uh, interview thing the other day where we were talking with people about the $2 bill, about the idea that the state is going to consider imposing it. They're talking about us. Come on, we're the ones with the lowest taxes. They're going to impose a $2 tax on us. Well, it would make it wonder if which local politicians are the ones that are pushing for this. We've heard nothing from Carl Wilson that I know of one way or another, or Herman Bertschiger for that case. One of them's our state rep and the other's our state senator. I don't recall hearing anything from them. Where are they in the newspaper or any other place making a statement? I don't like this, or I think it's great. Well, one person we do know is there. We're going to tell you who that is in just a moment. But Mike's going to call up the newspaper article, and then I'm going to tell you what it says because it's hard to read it on this little tiny screen.
Okay. Okay, there you have. There's the little clipping from the front page of today's Courier.
Right.
And Dale, do you have that over there too?
Yeah. And what it says is House bill would hike county's property tax rate, and local officials are neutral on the law, which would raise rate from 58 cents to $2. Mike, why are local officials neutral on the law? Do they have no idea what we think?
Yes, they do know what we think. Why are they not representing us? They don't want to represent us because they don't really, in their heart of hearts, actually do that.
Now, this article is written by guess who? Who would that possibly be? Let's see. I'm going to read you some of the journalism with integrity. Now, we're not talking about an editorial here. We're talking about the facts that are printed on the front page of the Courier. Who is just the most stellar example of that kind of journalism in this town? Mike Jones.
I'm thinking Jim Moore.
Jim Moore. Here's what Jim Moore wrote. A potentially historic bill in the Oregon House would dramatically improve the financial landscape for Josephine County and a dozen other cash-strapped Oregon counties. Wait, now, I understand that could be written into an editorial. Why, this will dramatically improve. On the other hand, it could just as easily say, if you were on the winning side in the last decade, that it would dramatically and badly affect Oh, good words, Dale. Boy, what a journalist.
Yes.
That it would
Yes.
be a
I mean, the people
disaster.
who, the voters in the county, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just saying the voters in the county would consider this a big negative.
The bill, House Joint Resolution 21, you could also call it Agenda 21, thank you, if approved by Oregon voters, would amend the state constitution by setting a minimum permanent property tax rate in all 36 counties of $2 per thousand of assessed value. There is no catch. Jim Moore, why are you writing there is no catch? But in point of fact, Jim Moore, why are you writing in point of fact? The law would apply only to the 13 counties in the state with permanent rates of less than $2. He calls it a potentially historic bill that will dramatically improve the financial condition of Josephine County.
How nice.
This is Jim Moore, ace journalist. There's your Daily Courier. Are you still subscribing to the Daily Courier? We'll tell you what's in there if you like, but they get money from you when you do that.
Yes. That's right. And Keith Heck says on page A8 there, he says, we're not supporting it and we're not against it.
Okay,
Yes.
so one of the prime people that's behind the scenes in politics, you'll want to know this, that sent a letter off to the legislature begging them to please, please impose this tax on us because we just don't know any better. Okay, that's Dwight Ellis, former chair of the Board of County Commissioners. Now, one of the reasons that Dwight Ellis actually quit a little early from his job was that he wanted to run the recall campaign against Sandy Casanelli, but not while he was in office. So it's Ed Bowers will tell you today, I guess, if Ed's alive, that, well, I was behind it. No, Ed Bowers was a figurehead. He thinks he was in charge of it. It was Dwight Ellis. It was Dwight Ellis from the get-go. Dwight Ellis opened an office that he paid for, and he manned the office when nobody else was there. Dwight Ellis would be there for the recall of Sandy Casanelli, and the main reason, it wasn't because, well, she said something about pets. Oh, please. Well, she doesn't like veterans. What? She was in the Merchant Marine, okay? And eventually Congress is going to say, okay, all right, yes, they were veterans. You know, a lot of them died. Lots and lots of them died in World War II. No, the main reason, the same thing that happened to those counselors in the city council that got recalled, and hers followed theirs just a few months later, as I recall, a year later, a few months later. It was very close. She would always say things like, I don't like this. Please don't impose this kind of tax. I oppose this levy that's up now, and the next levy, and the next levy. I oppose them. And Dwight Ellis was just, she only voted no 10% of the time, but they started calling her Casanoli. Well, she was saying no to their fondest wishes. We were all saying no to their fondest wishes, and I would imagine if they could fire all of us, they would. As a matter of fact, what they were doing is they were trying to stop anybody from saying things they didn't like. So here's what happened in that regard. Not Keith Heck, he would do it, but it was Dwight Ellis. He started a new rule that he had because he didn't like what people were saying at the weekly business session. And they were not yelling and screaming things. And they were not using negative language. Well, they were saying we don't like this, but they weren't using scatological language. They weren't cursing. They were not cursing, which maybe you could understand him doing this. No, what he started to do is when somebody would come up and say something, he instructed the camera guys to cut the microphone. Whenever citizens would stand up, they would get up, well, you know, I could have agreed with you that he did that.
Yeah. How nice.
All government officials could speak. Anyone that he agreed with could speak, government officials, but nobody else could speak. Now, this fit right in with the treasurer at that time, John Harrelson. The people should sit there and be educated by us. So that's when John Harrelson, as an
Mm-hmm.
elected official, see, we were allowed at that point to ask questions when people made a speech. They would get up, as at the Grants Pass City Council, they would get up and they would say something, and we could say, well, Mr. Harrelson, isn't it true that last week you said this, but this week you're saying that? I don't understand why those two things are diametrically opposed. Well, he'd get so upset. So he finally, as an elected official, he said, well, I'll come and I'll make my report, but I will take no questions from the audience. He's an elected official, but he's going to take no questions from the audience. So Dwight Ellis, the person that's one of the pushers behind this $2 bill that's going to impose a state tax on you if it passes, Dwight Ellis took it a step further and actually cut off the audio part so that you could not hear what us mere citizens were saying and could only hear what the government had to say. And when Cheryl Walker came in, there was no chance that anyone was going to get to use the money that they have already put out in order to get citizens' voices out there for whatever club you belong. It could be the Rotary Club, okay? But they would not get a chance to be on cable television. Got to cut that off. And the letters to the editor about Dwight Ellis, including from his daughter, said how brave he was for finally facing down all those people who constantly win all those elections, for finally facing them down and denying them the right to get up there and scream out obscenities. It did say that. And that's where Dennis Weber got involved. People are screaming out obscenities at these meetings. I said, no, they're not. You don't go to the meetings. Why are you telling people this? They might believe you because you're a pastor that you're telling them the truth. It's not the truth. They don't do that. The only person who's come close recently, this guy.
Yes. Yes, he does come close from time to time. And then, of course, there's Dale with it. He's always saying F and F and F and F and F'er.
I was quoting the airport's manager, who is doing it again. I think it's surprised. I think it's surprised Cheryl. I don't think she knew about this. And so she sort of came just a little unglued, didn't she?
Yes. Now, so is there anybody else that's a signer to this letter and who did he send it to?
Well, it says in the newspaper, if the newspaper's to be believed, and it's on that page 2 that you were page 8 that you were just looking at, that Dwight Ellis was one of the people that sent in a letter to the state legislature pleading with them to please impose a tax on us, because you see, we're so stupid that for a decade we've said no.
I just happen to have that little walking around tape that we did that says what the citizens think of the $2 bill.
Let's let them speak. And Mike, don't cut their microphone, okay?
Okay, I'll try not to.
So Josephine County has a base property tax of 58 cents per thousand, and there is an Oregon constitutional amendment that is House Joint Resolution 21 that will make the base property tax $2 per thousand minimum statewide. Instead, and we have 58 cents, which I believe is the lowest in the state here now.
So it's also the lowest employment rate in the state and the lowest income in the state and the highest probably in senior citizens. And so what they're doing is they're taking away our right to vote on things. I mean, it's no longer in our hands.
Right.
And when you take away the person's, an individual's right to vote, then you're asking for a lot of trouble.
Then we have taxation without representation.
Exactly. Thank you. Better way of saying it. Exactly. That's exactly what I meant too. And it's going to, I mean, what's the sense of going down and voting if it's not going to do any good? And then they just take it away and say, well, we're going to give everybody a $2,
I thought we were going to have to look long and hard to find smart people out here today. High five.
I've only watched the show a couple of times, so but I liked what you had to say. It was during the videotape. I actually want to use that because I want to make my own documentary, especially the part where you must be subservient to.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
I've heard a little bit about that, and no, I'm not in favor of that, simply because the whole concept of the property tax has been that's something that we've had some local control over with our vote, and I don't like that steep of, well, the amount of the increase isn't the point. It's the fact that the state is making that decision for counties, as opposed to allowing us to make that decision ourselves.
Right,
That's unsettling.
And the way this would work is a constitutional amendment has to be voted on by the citizens. So they, it'd be on the ballot statewide. So then many people who live in a county where their property tax rate is already over $2, they may be feeling like they're subsidizing us because we have a lower tax rate, and it's likely that that constitutional amendment could pass. It would make $2 be the minimum per thousand of assessed value property tax throughout the state. What do you think of that?
I think that's going to upset a lot of people. Times are hard right now, so people are not. I saw some guy just the other day, driving a car around with big stickers all over it. No new taxes. Obviously, he's up on all this.
Right.
It's like he doesn't want. Hey, they're an evil thing that we have to have, but I think in the way that things are right now, it's probably not a great idea to try to do that. I mean, what we need to do here in this city is we need to do something for these homeless people who are all over. I mean, I've never seen anything like this, and it's kind of sad. But I don't think these people are bad. I just think, times are hard right now, and you see these people everywhere. I've become so aware of it since I've been here. I grew up in this town. I never saw that before.
How we strike this balance between paying for services we need, infrastructure upgrades that we need, law enforcement, et cetera, while at the same time, not spending tax dollars irresponsibly. I mean, that's what it's like to live in America. The tension between those two needs always exist. So really, the only issue you're asking about that I feel very strongly about at all is just that whole issue of the state deciding our property taxes, which has always been a local decision. And I believe in most states, it's a local decision.
So there's an Oregon constitutional amendment being proposed. That's House Joint Resolution 21, and that will raise the property tax minimum statewide. There will be a minimum of $2 per thousand. We'll go from 58 cents to $2.
Wow, that's a big increase.
What do you think about that?
So there'll be a lot of people losing their houses and moving out in foreclosures.
Well,
They can't afford
the levy just got voted down, and it would have taken the base rate up to $1.98. So it's almost exactly the same thing as this.
Yeah.
But this is permanent. This is not a levy. This is permanent. This is a constitutional amendment that makes it $2 per thousand, no matter what county you're living in, as a base rate. And then, of course, everybody taxes. Well, they all tax something on top. Locally here in Grants Pass, there is a public safety levy that's on top of that, and then countywide, there's the animal shelter levy, and all these things that are stacked on top of it that make it much, much more. As a matter of fact, the lowest property tax rate after all the stuff is added in, schools and that sort of stuff, is over $6 a thousand in the county. But this would bump it up by $2.
Wow.
What do you think about that?
I think about all the people that jumped in and bought houses in the last 15 years, like when it came to the year 2000 and everyone thought that the world was going to change and banks were giving out loans and people were moving into houses. And now if they're going to up the tax even more, we've already had so many people homeless, losing their houses, foreclosed on. Look at the numbers there. Is it going to end or help people that are already struggling or enhance the population, like the total of homelessness people, or is it just going to move more richer people in to get the lower class out? I don't agree with it.
Good question.
Yeah, I don't agree with it.
you really have to be, you know, a CEO of a tech company to live nicely in San Francisco now.
So what do you suppose would happen to people in Josephine County if we start jacking up the cost of just having a place to live?
Well, they would have to move a Google company here. Right? So
Well, I like it, but
but then, you know, that forces everybody out. So it's a huge issue right now in San Francisco. People are at community meetings and people are just up in arms because of how expensive it is to live there. So it's
So you can move up to Grants Pass anytime soon?
well, no. I just moved there 3 years ago from Grants Pass. It's a culture shock. So this house is just around the corner from my house. And 2 weeks ago, it sold for $2.8 million.
wow.
This little teeny box, and it is about 1,800 square feet.
Wow.
And it has no lawn, no nothing around it. And just down the street from this house, neighbors of mine who live next door to each other. One of them is an attorney. The next house over, both parents are architects, and they still have trouble making mortgage payments and stuff like that.
So
there are problems on both ends of the economic spectrum.
They cannot win at the ballot box, Mike. They cannot win there. We win the people who are saying, no, let's be more fiscally conservative about this, or let's keep the money out of the hands of the commissioners. They win every time. So this reminds me of that step that that former legal counsel, Steve Rich, made. You want to fill him in on that? Remind him of what the details were on that, on who gets a chance to determine what our fees are going to be. Fees or taxes. Tell them about that, Mike.
And if I caught all of that, it was a little spotty in there, but essentially, I believe you were asking about the fees and the challenge to the fees section of the charter that Steve Rich did here. Well, back in late '90s, early 2000, there was a measure on the ballot. And it was, I think, probably sneakily worded because there was a part of the charter that indicated that if you wanted to raise a fee, you first had to propose that to the people and put it on the ballot, and then people had to vote for it in at least a simple majority. And naturally, government didn't want that. So they came up with a sneaky little thing saying, well, we just need to outline the procedure by which we would raise fees. And we'll put that to you for your approval. And then that'll be just step one in the process or something like that. And it turns out that wasn't step one. That was step 12. And you were already off the cliff. And they took back the power to raise fees unilaterally. So and then I guess there was a challenge to that, and the way that we have looked at it, it almost appears as though the challenge is a setup so that they would have legal backing for their ability to raise the fees unilaterally anytime. And that's where we're at now. And now the frequency of them raising the rates is twice a year, but they're proposing up to 4 times a year, aren't they, Dale?
Yeah, well, they've talked about that, but it's at the moment it's twice a year. And this coming Wednesday, to keep it topical, which we try to do, they're going to be talking about the 6 different departments that really must raise your rates. I mean, they really need to. Also, as what was it Cheryl Walker said, the rest of the government would grind to a halt or it would stop or something if they didn't get, they need to do this. And so that's what they're going to do. And you can come and you can speak, but they're not going to listen to you. They made that clear. Well, you're going to have 24 people here, which we did. And they're all saying that we ought to fund the sheriff, which just turns out it's all anti-levy people. Oh, yeah, but you can have them here, but I'm getting mystery telephone calls from people saying, please don't do it.
Yes.
And I'm going to believe them.
Yes. Yeah, how convenient.
You cannot believe your own eyes. Who are you going to believe first? Me, who just told you that we're not spending any money on this at all, or your lying eyes? Condescension. These are people who feel that they have all of the answers. And there are plenty of people out in the general audience that say, well, they were elected for a reason. Now, Mike, what are the requirements to run for county clerk who says that we're morons because we question government? That's a nice thing, Art Harvey. And what are the identical requirements to run for county commissioner? What are the two requirements, Mike Jones?
Well, I believe that you have to. I think you have to be able to compose a intelligible sentence. Is that right?
No. Keith Eck is a commissioner. Keith Eck is a commissioner. Go back again. What the two requirements are?
A heartbeat and breathing, I think.
Yeah, you have to.
Do you have to believe ambulatory?
You have to have lived in the. Well, not that either. But you have to, as Keith knows, the evidence of that, you have to be living in the county for 6 months. You could have just moved here from anywhere, from that horrid California or whatever. You have to live in the county for 6 months, and you have to be able to breathe. Mm-hmm. That's it. Those are the requirements. And Cheryl got in with 62 votes. It's a mandate from the public. We've made it clear what we want, but Keith Eck and the other two commissioners, they're going to take no stand. We're a little confused by what the people have said over the last decade because they always say no, sometimes the resounding numbers, and we always say yes, and there's three of us. But we're part of the ruling class, don't you see? And because the working class just doesn't understand our logic. I recently asked some questions, partly about why are these people at the airport still paid for something they've never done? They're still being paid. And Cheryl Walker's response was, I don't even want to answer Mr. Matthews because his logic is so poor that it's not even worth talking about. Yeah. As Simon Harris said in that same meeting, it's amazing to me. It's amazing to me that you go to these meetings and you then will sit there and you're apparently not understanding anything that you hear. I'm not understanding it, really? And then you say things and it's obvious that you're, asleep or something? You're not paying any attention. You get up and you say things that you know are totally wrong. What's totally wrong? That the people are still being paid? What's totally wrong? That it looks like the whole thing at the North Valley Industrial Park is going to revert to the city? Is that totally wrong? Legal counsel doesn't think it's totally wrong. Even Simon Harris says he doesn't think it's wrong. Keith Eck was arguing in the meeting with Cheryl Walker, saying no, that's what's going to happen. So where's the totally wrong part? Honestly, now at this tiny instant in time, if I have no idea what I'm talking about, as Ed Bowers used to say, he just gets up here and babbles. It's just babbling. It's not even English, really. I mean, it's just blah, 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 blah. It's just babbling. That's the way we're being painted. And so if you're not a member of a certain club, and that certain club, you have to have a certain kind of income. Oh, no, that's not true. Oh, yes, it is true. Stop telling me things that are not true that we can see for ourselves. In order to get in that club, you have to dedicate a certain amount of your income. I don't mean, we're not talking percentages. We're talking about dollar amounts, or they won't let you in. It's an exclusive club at which the commissioners go and feel free to talk about county business anytime they want to, despite the warnings they've been given multiple years by the citizens and what it says in the state constitution, which they swore to uphold. They go there and they exchange ideas with their buddies. No, we don't. Yes, you do. And that's what Carl Wilson was doing there, too. And that's why when I called in and I said, these things are going on at this Rotary Club, this is how Carl Wilson said, I'll never let you on my radio show the rest of your life. You're banned forever. And I can't eat pizza at that place anymore either. They're breaking the law. And you want proof? Here's what this guy said. What was it that he said, Mike Jones? Oh,
I'm not catching it. This is the worst. I got to tell you, it's a sorry thing. I'm hoping that you hear me okay, but I am having to watch your lips very closely to see if I can discern what it is you're asking me, and I don't know what you just said.
Oh, I'm sorry, buddy. I'm sorry. So what it was that Keith X said was, I know there was no question in his mind. I know we're breaking the law, and I don't care. Mike, do you want to bring it on home, bud? No, he doesn't. So I will. So it's this lag. Sorry, you guys. Well, you're not lagging. You are understanding. I think it's a condescending attitude. I think it's the attitude that that we're the rulers, and you just have to believe what we say, even though you've seen, like Keith Heck, he sort of came a little unglued again at that this last meeting, where he said, well, now I'm going to tell you that we've had absolutely nothing to do with kicking off this last levy and nothing to do with it at all. And people in the audience were shaking their heads. They were simply shaking their heads. They weren't yelling anything out at him. They were simply shaking their heads. And he said, well, if you're going to shake your heads, then I'll just stop talking. Good start.